Everybody, it's Tom, and I wanted to come to you this week for two purposes. One, I just wanted to recommend, I try and check them out, Act Out. It's a weekly program that's put out by Occupy and Eleanor Goldfield, and they just do a really solid job of not just relaying a lot of the highlights of the week's news, but framing it in a manner which I think is simply more coherent than is generally encountered. And in connection with that, I thought I'd sort of draw out or connect a sort of more theoretical approach to one of the items from their last week's program, which on one hand addressed the question of the recent Vault 7 leak from Wikipedia, WikiLeaks, vis-a-vis the CIA and some of the code which they have been using to surveil or expand the capacities of the surveillance state. The other segment of their program dealt with the issue of tax protest, especially in connection with military expenditures, which is an enormous topic in and of itself, but I'm going to bracket that and highlight the first portion, the question of the surveillance state and the need to exhibit a certain fortitude in our protection of the rights of privacy. In fact, subsequent to the developments which are apparent in last week's program there at Act Out, now we have a situation where unfolding legislation is making our internet search histories saleable to whomever wishes to buy. Sort of just another manner in which privacy is being compromised by certain developments on the part of both state and capital. At all events, the theoretical framing which I wanted to introduce here is one we inherit from, among other sources, Michel Foucault. And in particular, I'd like to direct your attention to some of the offerings in his very important text, in English generally translated Discipline and Punish, The Birth of the Prison, the French title, just to make certain I Surveiller et punir. Naissance de la prison. Surveiller et punir. La naissance de la prison, de surveil. Surveil operating in a slightly different sense than it does in English, and thus it's generally translated as discipline, indicating its kind of bivalent quality in the French language, so we lose out on some of that. But that is the nature of translation. In any event, within this work, he identifies a phenomenon which he terms Panopticism. The inspiration for that is Jeremy Bentham, toward the end of the 18th or early 19th century. Let me get the exact year for you. Develops an architectural framework for a prison which he refers to as the Panopticon. And what distinguishes the Panopticon is an arrangement which permits a person or set of persons at a central tower to look out upon all of the prisoners within the compound, here arranged in an annular or circular fashion around this central point of observation. And through tricks of backlighting, create a scenario where these prisoners, or whomever is occupying the cells, are potentially seen at any given moment, but at no point can they see whether or not they're actually being observed. This creates a kind of tension psychologically that conduces very, very effectively to their subjection, to produce a docility in the subjects, in those who are in the prison. It's an architectural scheme for a prison, but it's more than that. It's more than an architectural scheme. It's a blueprint for what Michel Foucault identifies as the anatomy of power as it manifests in our own society, a disciplinary society. Numerous effects emerge from the consequence, or emerge as consequences of this anatomy becoming instantiate. First of all, let's go ahead and take a few steps back and review the mechanism whereby the Panopticon affects his power. And it is by decoupling, as Foucault puts it, the dyad of seeing and being seen. So a disequilibrium of power is produced. The person who is seeing is decidedly in a state of dominance. The person who is being seen or not seen because they don't know, and that not knowing is what creates the anxiety that underwrites or founds their suggestibility, their docility, their pliability, their obedience ultimately. This is what's at the core of the architecture. But we see that in the disciplinary society, in our society, that the technologies that we now implement allow it to be, and even the architecture of the contemporary city, as some have noted, allow this phenomenon to be multiplied in a way that exceeded even the scale of probably Bentham's utopian anticipations. So you've got cameras everywhere. And now even our computers are potentially apertures through which the seeing gaze of power can confront and elicit from us a sense of anxiety, which in turn can translate into our pliability before the dictates of that system. The genius is that this operates with a minimum of effort on the part of the dominating or oppressive power, which is part of the reason why you can see it emerge and be deployed increasingly from even before Bentham formalizes it in the sort of odd genius of his plan. Even from slightly before that, say from the late 17th century forward, you have various manners in which this schema is insinuating itself into how society as a whole is organized. And within the broader argument of discipline and punish, Foucault sees this as a shift from what he would refer to broadly as a political project based on a concept of sovereignty to a political project based on the concept of discipline. The difference being that with the concept of sovereignty, you can have power located in a particular entity or subject, a king, a definite body of people, what have you. And then there's this tension and a kind of intense, very almost carnal relationship which can establish itself between the people and the sovereign power or power structures. With the advent of a disciplinary society, by contrast, the locus of power decentered from being situated in any given individual. It exists in the system, in the architecture. So as a result, the actual people become, at least the impression arises that the actual people become secondary to its operation. Because you can take anybody, in theory, and insert them or extract them from a given role within the Panopticon or within society as a whole. And so the very ambiance of culture is compromised because no one feels that they can escape the penetrating nature of the all-seeing gaze. And this obviously becomes all that much more relevant at our own digital junction when the surveillance of the state and capital of the upper echelons of power affects itself not simply in the obvious ways, such as, cameras everywhere, and also through our computers and so on, but also in subtler ways, subtler suggestions, such as how the police are portrayed on television. So you have forensic dramas, for example, and the narrative that there's no escaping because of the powers of science and technology to infer the very, architecture of your own mind at times. And you can see that, for instance, in the film Minority Report, based on the Philip K. Dick short story. You can see that there is, by the more considerate, cognizance of this problematic. So to draw the circle up back to the issue of why we need to instantiate and effect defense and also reassertion of the rights of privacy, it comes down to who and what we're going to be as individuals and what constructs or determines who and what we're going to be. And the argument is that the manner, the degree to which our privacy is subjected to the force of state and capital oversight, is the degree to which our own interiority is in a way robbed from us. It's not actually robbed from us, happily. The nature of subjectivity itself is beyond the access of the grasping mitts of power, but that metaphysical convenience is at times occluded by the stories that we are told by our society. And this is an affront, really, and a threat to our exercise of freedom, which is the predicate of our own fulfillment. Intelligence, love, compassion, freedom, these terms are in a relationship of tension, if not outright antithesis, with submission before these frameworks. So much by way of trying to connect this issue to the sort of broader theoretical project of someone like Michel Foucault, whom, if you have not encountered, I encourage you to do so. His works are at times difficult, but in my view, they merit, they reward the effort of meeting that difficulty. So anyway, there you go for this week. This is Tom. Just a few thoughts on Panopticism. As we get it from Michel Foucault, I'll put some links below. I hope you're all doing well, and I'll see you guys later.